Forget that Spencer name you know me by. Today, I am Oregon recruiting because I am back. Mostly.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time. Once again for Locked On Ducks, I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. I'll give you my somewhat delayed reaction to Immanuel Iheanacho and Devin Jackson committing with Tommy Toffee last week. It was a busy end of the week for the Ducks, and I was jumping into a lake. But that's how Oregon does recruiting, of course, and August 1st is a date the Duck fans should be aware of. But I say mostly back because Oregon just had a really surprising decommitment in the class of 2026. Viliami Moala is a guy that has been committed to the Ducks since October, and a three-star defensive lineman who originally is from the state of Utah. Here's what makes it crazy and really surprising. This caught everybody, and I mean everybody that I saw who covers Oregon at all off guard. He moved to Willamette High School from Utah. He matched up there with Tony Cumberland, another long-time defensive line commit for the Ducks. And Willamette High School, I think, is within shouting distance of Autzen Stadium. Maybe not actually. My geography is pretty iffy no matter where I go. I get that from my dad. Anyway, long story. So he decommits, and it comes really out of nowhere because everyone's going, whoa, there was no buzz. And he's now moving to a high school in Alabama. I am not well versed on everything that led to this particular situation coming about. As soon as I saw it, though, right, a decommitment, that's going to happen several times over the course of a recruiting class. That's standard operating procedure. A guy who moved to go to a high school close to where he was going to play college football and did so with a teammate or a future teammate, that's strange. That's strange. I have no idea what exactly the reasoning was, what the thinking was. If someone dropped me a conspiracy theory in my DM about any number of things, I'd probably believe it. I would get more tinfoil hat centric than you have ever seen me as the host of this particular Oregon Ducks podcast. Because I'd go, it's got to be something. I don't know what that something is. It's got to be something. So, not wishing any ill will on the kid, of course, but that one came out of nowhere, dropped Oregon's composite rankings in the 24/7 metrics down a few slots. They'd surged all the way up to number 11 with a trio of commitments last week. They're back down to 14. That might change. As this show is airing, or maybe by the time you listen to or watch it, Jalen Lott, I almost said Jaden Ott, the former Cal running back, who Oregon went after, by the way. He's now at Oklahoma. If you didn't know, he's had a really, really good career. Injury-riddled, but man, that guy's good. Jalen Lott, the athlete who probably plays wide receiver, top 50 player in the 24/7 composite, number 5 athlete in the country, scheduled to commit on July 8th. Oregon is reportedly in a good spot. I have heard good things. If he winds up going to the Ducks, that's going to be a fun guy to break down film-wise with Brian here on the show. So if Lott ends up committing, Oregon could be right back inside the top 10. If he doesn't, and it's on to the next, then Oregon's still sitting inside the top 15 even after the decommitment there. But one guy to keep an eye on with, and this was another thought that I had when Moala decommitted, somebody who Brian, as my everydayers know, Brian Smith, longtime recruiting analyst, and Moala is somebody who Brian has liked for quite a long time. 3-star guy, doesn't have, a ton of accolades or recruiting hype or anything, but I was going through Oregon's class one day and said, yeah, they've got Moala, who's a 3-star. He snapped back. I mean, that guy's not going to be a 3-star. So definitely have plenty of upside, and Oregon's back to the drawing board a little bit along the defensive line. And my guy Max Torres of Scoop Duck over at On 3 pointed to Deuce Geralds, who is being recruited by a bevy of big-time schools and is also a top 75 player nationally in the 24/7 composite, top 10 defensive lineman. He goes 6'2.5", 265. The schools reportedly after him per 24/7, Ohio State, Michigan, Ole Miss, LSU. Perhaps that's where Oregon's focus goes. The other reason that, the Moala decommitment is surprising, this is a defensive line class, or recruiting class rather, that has 2 guys now along the defensive line. And at Cumberland, Tony Cumberland, who's been committed to the Ducks for a long time, since September of 2023, which is crazy. Bo Nix was Oregon's quarterback, and he had recently brought Tez Johnson, his brother, to the program, and Tony Cumberland committed to the Ducks, and he certainly shows no signs of pulling a Moala here. But he and Dutch Horace, who's a 3-star edge, are the only defensive lineman Oregon has. I kind of thought this would be a heavier defensive line cycle, recruiting-wise, for the Ducks, because they went very heavy with the defensive line in the 23 and 24 classes in particular. 25 was a little bit lighter. I thought we might see something, not necessarily that goes back to 2023 where they had just 10 or 11 defensive line commits, and I include edge players or outside linebackers, however you want to get technical with it. Guys that are lining up in the front 4 of Oregon's base 4-2-5 personnel on defense, I consider that defensive line. Like Mateo Uyunglele, like technically, I think can be an outside linebacker sometimes, like whatever. Okay, you know what I'm talking about. I like to keep it simple. So I thought Oregon might have a pretty heavy number, or solidly heavy number, of defensive line commits. I guess with the timelines of those guys and the few number of guys who have transferred out, you've had Jaden Moore, Amarion Winston, Johnny Bowens have all transferred out. That's kind of it. Maybe they feel really good about that defensive line room, and they don't think they have to go out and load up or try to find a couple true freshmen that could contribute early, because you're going to have Aiden Breland playing this year. And it, of course, will be his first real season to contribute. Amari Washington's going to have the biggest season of his career so far. And again, it's just going to be a redshirt sophomore. So maybe they feel like the multi-year outlook is strong enough. It's just a suspicion I've got. But the other reason that the Moala decommitment came as a surprise is because Tony Tuioti and Tosh Lupoy and Dan Lanning have historically been really good recruiting defensive linemen. So I think they'll still add a couple more in this class at least. Like sitting at 2, I don't think they'll sit at 2. I'd expect them to get that number at least a 4 by the time this recruiting cycle comes to a close. I won't be shocked if it winds up getting higher than that. But hey, July has been really good. It's kind of what we thought June would be. First, this episode is brought to you by Game Time. If you ever decided last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family, maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands, that's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last minute deals without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, even invite a bigger group to come with you if that's your thing. Game Time makes it possible. I'd take food and drinks over more people myself, but hey, that's just me. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch, and they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. I've used Game Time on a couple of different occasions myself, and the process was great. I got a view of my seat. I knew what to expect. I got a great deal, and I had no issues with getting the ticket on my phone. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. That's Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Battled an illness that I I don't even know where I picked it up from. That's why I said at the start of the show, I'm mostly back. Oregon recruiting was as back as it ever has been last week, right as I started my vacation trip, which was wonderful. Thanks for asking. Oregon is a beautiful, wonderful, awesome state that I love getting to explore every summer. But last week was the heater that a lot of us had been discussing, prognosticating about, predicting for quite a long time. Tommy Toffee flips from Cal. That's Wednesday. Then Thursday rolls around, and it's a double quack day with Immanuel Iheanacho, 5-star offensive lineman, and Devin Jackson, a 4-star safety. I would like to give a special shout out to current Oregon linebacker Devin Jackson. His name is spelled with an O in Devin. New Devin Jackson is spelled with an I. But current Devin Jackson, about to be one of Oregon's top 2 linebackers this year, tweeted out the Spider-Man meme. Like, dude, I love it. I love it so much. So very, very much. And it was just 2 Spider-Men pointed at each is really good. Really good. Anyway, that was a really, really good day for the Ducks. And June had big expectations because fools that host podcasts gassed it up that way, you know? I mean, what buffoon could have possibly predicted a big June? Well, it turns out the Danimal and company were just waiting a little bit. They were just saying, you know what? Spencer thinks it's going to be a great June. Other people say great June. Look at all the visitors. Let's push it to July just to mess with them. I got a response from somebody in the midst of Oregon landing these guys, which all in all occurred in about a 24-hour span. I got a response from someone on Twitter that said I should go out of town more often. And look, I'm not saying you're right. I'm just saying that if that's the precedent, if that's what it takes for Oregon to go on a recruiting heater, I might need to just resign as host of this show. Because clearly, the more detached I get from it, the better it works out. Because that is what we were all waiting for. The visitor list, the lack of recruiting success in April and May relative to some other programs in the country or in the conference, even like USC, who's got the number 1 class. Like, it was not a busy spring for Oregon. There were a couple names, sure. But spring, I think in most people's minds, because you had some players who have been committed for quite a long time, spring was highlighted by the decommitments. Or not decommitments. Well, there were certainly a couple of those. But it was highlighted by the misses. Jackson Cantwell, Jared Curtis most notably. It's easy to get focused on those guys and just forget about Tony Cumberland. I bring him up a lot on the show, frankly, because he's somebody who has been committed for a long time. You don't think about him or other guys that have stayed loyal to the Ducks throughout this entire process. Think about Tredarian Ball, who committed at the end of July last year and shut down his recruitment in the spring before he went off and had the chance to take more official visits, said, no, I want to stick with Oregon. If one of those guys didn't commit back then, but committed today, you'd feel a lot better about Oregon recruiting because it's new, fresh, exciting. But Oregon has started to really roll it in. They've got 3 5-stars in this 2026 recruiting class. Can they get up to 5? Probably not. Could they find 4? Yeah, 4 seems pretty attainable there. That top 10 class also feels incredibly attainable. So Iheanacho is the big name that came off the board. And this was a dramatic shift for many people, including myself, if I'm being honest, that he was expected to announce his commitment in early August. I mean, I had a cold open not long ago on the show that said August 5th just continues to look bigger and bigger, or something to that effect, because that's when Immanuel Iheanacho was committing. Well, now he's committed to the Ducks. This is somebody who is from the Rockville, Maryland area. And he was once heavily considering Maryland early in the recruiting process, but Oregon has now landed a guy who could wind up being the next Josh Connerly. And I say that for two reasons. Number one, he is one of the highest rated players in his recruiting class, and he committed to the Ducks in a high-profile fashion. Connerly was the number one offensive tackle, number one or two, depending on which metric you look at, and he committed to Oregon at the end, like in the springtime, and it was the first major recruiting win for Dan Lanning and the staff that made everybody turn their heads and go, oh, hey, I think those new guys down in Eugene are going to be able to recruit. That is, of course, proven to be very true. Well, Iheanacho committed on the Pat McAfee show, which I think airs on ESPN2. I don't watch it personally, but saw the clip. He had a shirt saying the grass is damn green in Eugene, and that's all great and whatnot. So that happened, and then you realize that not only is he 6'6.5", 345 pounds, did not allow a sack his senior year, and led his team to, was it a state? Georgetown Prep secured its 5th interstate athletic conference title in 6 years. Dude's pretty darn good. He's got a comparison by at least one scout to Mekhi Becton of the New York Jets, who was an early round draft pick. But wait for it. Here's the kicker. This, according to Gabe Brooks, 24/7 Sports. Basketball participation, which reveals a nimble post presence with crafty touch around the rim, reflects in functional athleticism and foot quickness. End quote. Josh Connerly also played basketball. Now, I will get Brian on either tomorrow's show or Thursday, probably tomorrow, and we'll break down Iheanacho's film, where he can still improve and all that sort of stuff. This is a guy who you get as involved, I think, mentally as a fan with the recruitment and the commitment as you do what he can be as a player, because this is an incredibly high-profile guy to go out and land. And after missing on some other high-profile offensive tackle commits like Jackson Cantwell, getting Iheanacho really felt like a big need for the Ducks. And so for them to go out and land him, really good work by Alik Terry and company. I mean, just phenomenal stuff. I know there are plenty of people out there that expected this to happen because he's had the crystal balls for so long. It still takes a lot of work. It still takes the right pitch. It still takes having that connection. I mean, kids from Rockville, Maryland, he's going to Eugene, Oregon for his college football. Can't wait. Cannot wait for that. And by the way, I haven't even mentioned Tommy Tofi, who can develop into a starting offensive lineman. Haven't even mentioned Devin Jackson. That can become a high-end playmaker on the back end of Oregon's defense and continues to add some size to Oregon's secondary recruiting. Chris Hampton continues to showcase his elite value to this recruiting staff time and again. But this was the heater. This is the heater Oregon fans are waiting for, and you got it. So now you got to take a little sigh of relief and understand, as I've said for a while, I don't think Oregon can get to a top 5 class. You've got USC that is locked into it. You've got Miami with a really high floor. Notre Dame's recruiting well. Like, there are plenty of other schools that I think will rank ahead of Oregon. But if Jalen Lott commits to the Ducks, or if he has by the time you're listening to or watching this show, fingers crossed, that probably puts them back inside the top 10. And then all you have to do is sustain. You then don't have to pass anybody at that point. You just have to sustain to pull a 4th straight top 10 class. And that, I think, is where this staff and this program should expect to be, because they've proven that that's what they're capable of, and I don't think that has materially changed. At least not yet. At least not. So somehow we're only a few weeks from August, which is crazy town. I mean, summer's flying by. I kind of want it to slow down because summer's great and fantastic and awesome. August 1st, things could change. So if you haven't been paying attention, there are a few changes that have taken place in college football over the years. Just a few. We're not really done with those yet. So August 1st is when NIL Go really starts to take effect on college sports, because that's when a lot of NIL deals that have been brokered since the House settlement was implemented. That opened up revenue sharing, which officially began on July 1st. Revenue sharing is one part of it. That is an athletic department directly paying players to be athletes for the school. Most of that money goes to football. Another chunk goes to men's basketball, typically. A smaller chunk to women's basketball, and an equal or smaller chunk to all the other sports combined, depending on the school. Every university has its different priorities. I don't know exactly where Oregon's are at. That's revenue sharing. The other side of this House settlement that, we said collectively, let's just throw more wrinkles into the sport. Why not? I do understand this one, though. It's called NIL Go, where they partner with Deloitte, one of the big four accounting firms in the United States, and they get to assess whether an NIL deal is fair market value. And their process has already begun, or their legitimacy has already begun. It's going to get challenged in court because you're now dealing again with capping the earning potential of college athletes, and the courts haven't liked that pretty consistently. So we'll see if that winds up getting implemented fully. But if it does, that could cause a change. And Brian has talked to me about this a good amount in the last couple of days. And what he says is, look, you could have some NIL deals combined with this special transfer portal window for designated student athletes that starts on, I believe it's July 7th or 8th of this year and goes for about a month, that they're going to be able to get some exemptions. Not entirely clear on how that works, frankly, but the NIL Go on August 1st is going to start evaluating deals and determining if they're fair market value. And if they're not, then those deals will be cut down. Money might not show up that was promised. Bad things you could see personnel and player movement. Now, I'm going to 50% apply what has been my broad general take about all of these changes with Oregon over the last 2 years to what Oregon has done in the last 15 years. Consistently, I have said over and over, and will continue to say over and over until everybody gets and understands what I know to be true and what you know to be true, which is that Oregon can win in any circumstance. No, they haven't won a national championship yet. We all know that, of course. But to say they haven't been one of the most winning programs in college football in the last 15 years is to just simply put, deny reality. And no matter what changes, no matter what wrenches have been thrown into the plans, no matter what has come about, Oregon's adapted and they go on to win games. I have no concern that that's going to materialize here. Now, what could happen is the advantage Oregon has as a tier 1 NIL university might be coming to an end. And the way that these things get structured varies from school to school, because some want to go more through the athletic department with direct revenue sharing. Some want to still heavily involve their NIL collectives. Well, places like Ducks Rising, or especially Division Street, which is the primary Oregon NIL collective, that is still going to exist even with revenue sharing. The question becomes, are they still able to offer the same deals legally because of the commission as they were doing before? And so I have always pushed back and will continue to push back even stronger on the idea that Oregon has unlimited NIL, they only buy players, and there's no culture, and all the crap that you see get thrown around, mostly in the online space, by fans of schools that hate Oregon or people who are just looking for attention individually. That's mostly who puts that stuff out there. But it's out there, so I call it out when appropriate. That can still be the case, which it is, while Oregon also is a Tier 1 NIL school. Now, the idea behind NIL Go and a commission and to have a cap on revenue sharing and to cut down on the amount of money NIL collectives are able to pay as a result of the NIL deals, the idea is to level the playing field. And so, yeah, it would Oregon still be at the top of the sport? Yes. Financially, I believe that answer is yes. Could their advantage get lessened starting on August 1st? And maybe not all at one time, but over the course of several years, if these things get held up in the courts, if they do get implemented, then yeah, sure, it could be less. Would I still feel good about where Oregon is? Absolutely. So keep an eye on this sort of stuff, because I think I know that there's no precedent for any of these sorts of things. You're in new territory. You've got the courts. You've got Congress who could get involved. The White House can get involved. Like you've got a lot of different factors that are at play. But certainly, if NIL deals start to get capped, yeah, maybe you could see a little bit of a difference. I don't think there will be massive chaos and all of a sudden Oregon's just going to have commits flock away and kids are going to say, I'm not going to Oregon anymore. Don't think there's going to be anything like that. Other places, we'll see. I don't think there's going to be quite that much chaos, but could you see a surprise player here or there decide to leave a school because, they promised me this much in NIL and I can't get that anymore, but I can get that over here somehow? Or I don't know. There's a lot of changes. Good thing to be aware of. Keep it on the radar. Keep the mailbag questions coming as well. I've got plenty to get to this week on the show. The content will be flowing, and I am back. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.